Welcome everyone to the L7 podcast, Buckeye edition. We needed to take a week to heal and recover before we talked about the national championship game that happened last Monday. And to do that, we have the captain, Byron Mitchell, with us today. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing better now that I've had time to process and get that healing process going.
Yeah, and as everyone has seen, read, heard, Ohio State did not win the national championship game on Monday, January 11th. They came well short in a 52-24 loss to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Byron, what happened in this game, man?
We got embarrassed offensively, defensively, just all across the board. We did not look like the Buckeyes that played against Clemson because we looked very, very, very good against Clemson, and against Alabama, we're just kind of like, it's whatever. It was just very surprising to see.
Yeah, and after that first quarter, we were tied 7-7 going into the second quarter. In the second quarter, we scored 10 points and Alabama scored 28. And that was the game right there, that 28-point quarter from them. And then third quarter, we had a touchdown. They had 10 points. Fourth quarter, we had 0 points at all, and they scored a touchdown. And it's hard to see because we lost by 28, just round up, lost by 30. And the stats from this game was mind-boggling just from Ohio State side. Justin Fields was 17 for 33, 194 yards, 1 touchdown pass, no picks. He had 67 yards rushing. Master Teague, who you said was going to be a breakout game, he had 2 touchdowns.
I called that. As soon as Trey Sermon went down, I was like, next man up. It has to be Master Teague. And he did what he had to do when they actually gave him the ball. There were a couple of drives where he wasn't on the field, and it was just strange that he wasn't on the field for the whole game when we needed all of our talent to play.
Yeah, and Chris Olave was 8 receptions, 69 yards. Garrett Wilson, 3 receptions, 50 yards. If you would tell someone that Ohio State's not going to throw an interception, not going to fumble, and they're still going to lose by almost 30, you would think that person's crazy, right?
Exactly. Because if you don't turn the ball over, you're most likely going to win the game. And Alabama had 1 fumble, which led to a touchdown for us.
Yep.
But then the rest of the game, they were just like all Alabama imposing their will on us.
They had a fumble. They had a targeting call go our way, and they still won in the way that they did. And just going to Alabama's side, Mac Jones, who we said was the 5th best player on the team, which he is. I mean, he was 36 for 45, 464 yards, breaking a record, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. Najee Harris was 22 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then when Najee went out, we had this random Brian Robinson Jr. had 10 carries for 69 yards. And we're like, who is this guy?
Probably the star running back next year.
Then the biggest one was Devonta Smith. And we talked about this when we were previewing the game. Sean Wade and them said they want to guard Devonta Smith. That's fine. Devonta Smith had 12 receptions for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. And that was by halftime.
Yes, all in the first half.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't watch the game, Devonta Smith didn't play the second half. Well, he played a little in the third, and then he had a thumb hand injury. So they took him back to the tent, and then they put a cast, and he was out for the game. So the 12 receptions, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns was in the first half. He had more receiving yards at half than the Buckeyes did total offense at the halftime. Also, when he was out the second half, John Mechie had 8 catches, 81 yards, and a 10.1 average. And Najee Harris also had a receiving touchdown, 7 receptions, 79 yards. And it did happen. Jalen Waddle did play, and he was hobbling. He'd come in and out, but on their first drive, he was the one who caught a crucial fourth down play.
Yep.
And he had 3 receptions for 34 yards. The dude hasn't played since October. And even when he got the ball, we couldn't guard him.
And he wasn't even 100%.
No. And it's crazy to see that in the second half, when Devonta Smith went out, we were sad because you never want to win like that and see a player get hurt. But we were just like, this is our chance to come back. That's how bad it was for us.
Yes. One player basically destroyed our whole team.
By halftime. To be honest, Byron, if Devonta Smith played that second half and Alabama still had their foot on the gas, it's not crazy to think they could have scored 70 points on us.
Oh, for sure. They scored a 50 piece on us, and he was out a half, so definitely could have scored 70. He probably would have had like 400 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Which is wild, because I know they would have had 60. He would have got a touchdown. And to think that 70 is on the realm of possibility if they was fully healthy in that second half makes me so sick, because we would have lost 70-something to 24.
That would have been probably the worst national championship ever.
So, I mean, Byron, what we talked about, let's just bring him up. Sean Wade, he wanted to guard Devonta Smith one-on-one for the challenge, and sometimes he got matched up with them, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he even got matched up with Jalen Waddle. And I don't know what the scheme was defensively. There was times we had linebackers on Devonta Smith, and you saw everyone tweeting from LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, to Cardell Jones saying they do realize Devonta Smith just won the Heisman last week. He's pretty good.
He's pretty good. Why we didn't have a special scheme for him is beyond me. I know you have to cover everybody on the field. I get that. But this guy is the Heisman winner, had over 1,500 yards in a season. Mm-hmm. And you still don't have any special schemes to disrupt him or cover him. It was just Kerry Coombs. I don't know what his defensive plan was. But once you see the guy has over 100 yards, I feel like he would change it, and he didn't.
I mean, I was watching the game with you, and you were getting very hot at the defensive scheme. Anyone going to guard this guy? Like, you were very upset at our.
I was. Like, I don't understand. It's a Heisman winner. Like, everyone said this. Like, if he doesn't win the Heisman, it'll be a travesty. And he'll be motivated and go off against us. Okay? Well, he won the Heisman, and he still went off against us. Mm-hmm. And no one was able to guard him. Like, I don't, like you said, I don't know what the defensive scheme was, but I don't understand why you would put a linebacker on a very athletic wide receiver is beyond me. And our defense just looked gas the whole game.
Yeah, which is crazy too, because we just played Clemson, and I, from a defensive side, we just couldn't do anything right. It's sad to say we are lucky we only gave up 52.
Yes.
That is bad to say that we're lucky we gave up 52. And even go through the game also, Alabama had 33 first downs. We only had 19. We were 6 for 14 on third downs. They were 6 for 11. We were 0 for 2 on fourth downs. They were 2 for 2. They ran 83 total plays. We ran 62. Like, it was, they were the only ones who lost the fumble. Total yards, they had 621. We had 341 passing yards. They had 464. We had 194 rushing. We had 147. They had 157 yards per play. They were averaging 7.5. We were averaging 5.5. On the first drive, they went for it on fourth down.
Yes, and converted it.
To Jalen Waddle. This one was bad. And from the offensive side, too, our offense that was so explosive. Literally against Clemson, we had Justin Fields had 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, one of the greatest performances in Buckeye history. And we couldn't get it going on offense. And also there were times where we punted, things like that. Did you feel like this game, we should have been in a no punt situation. We should have just been going for it on fourth down because if we don't score, we're not going to be able to keep up with these guys.
And we couldn't score, and we weren't able to catch up we weren't able to stay in the game. Like after we scored the third time, the score was 21-17, so it was a still manageable game. But then Alabama went off in that second quarter, and we just couldn't get our offensive going. Why we weren't? I know Justin Fields had 6 rushes for 67 yards, but I think he needed to rush more because one rush he went off for like 30-something yards, and I feel like Alabama wasn't equipped to deal with a mobile quarterback. I think we just needed to mix it up. I feel like we became stagnant and just kept trying to run and pass, and it just wasn't working for us. I know one time it was 4th and 3, and they ran the ball with Master Teague, and they should have passed it because you could see that Alabama was playing the run. So either play action, pass, or just pass the ball. Maybe you have Justin Fields run it, a quarterback sneak or something. But we just didn't look good offensively at all. And then Trey Sermon had an amazing 3-game skid, but he went out with a broken collarbone after the first play of the game, and it just wasn't good.
Yeah, and our wide receivers, Olave, Garrett Wilson, I mean, we forgot his name last week, and we apologized. This guy was not talked about because he kept Oldfield shut down. Patrick Surtain II, he put the clamps on our guys.
He did.
And other receivers weren't stepping up, and it's the defense and the offense. It just looked like it was truly night and day from the number 1 team in the country to the number 3 team in the country. And as the game kept going and going, we reached the point where we're like, oh, we could still win. I just don't want to get embarrassed. Like keep the score respectable, and we couldn't even do that. We lost by 28 points, and would have been more if Devonta Smith would have been playing. Like again, like I said earlier, thinking that if he played the whole game and Alabama just didn't care, and they could have potentially scored 70, make it's sickening.
Yeah, it was just a bad game from not front to back, because like I said, like our first 4 drives, we scored 3 out of 4 times, and we thought, okay, we're in this. But then we just couldn't. Defensively, we didn't have an answer for Devonta Smith or their offense at all.
And this is a question I've been pondering. I don't think this would have changed the outcome of the game. Do you think that with that emotional win against Clemson that we used? I mean, our whole year was dedicated to Clemson. From, like we said, countless times on the podcast, from the players, the alumni, everyone was dedicated to getting a shot against Clemson. We finally did it. We beat them, like that big gasp of air. We finally did it. Do you think that played a role that we come into Alabama into this game flat? Because, I mean, the Clemson game, we were amped up, and this is the national championship, but do you feel like we still had a little hangover from beating Clemson the way we did?
I think we did. Because, like you said, we've never beat Clemson before, and that was our first win against Clemson. So it was like emotional and high off life. Like for that whole week, I was just feeling good. And so I think it like the same thing happened with the players. They just maybe used all their energy against Clemson and didn't really have a good game plan going against Alabama. But I think that definitely played a huge part in what happened against Alabama.
Yeah, and then we finished AP poll, all the polls, number 2, being the runner-ups in the national championship game. And even though we were disappointed in the result, I think we would have been okay. Well, obviously, we wouldn't have been okay if we lost, but if we lost by a touchdown or 10 points or something like that in a shootout, I think we'd be much better than losing by almost 30. But on the good side of Ohio State, we weren't even supposed to be here. We weren't even supposed to have a season. Nope. I mean, we were the first to announce the new schedule. We were going to start on whatever, and then we got canceled. Justin Fields, these players, they fought all year. We want a season. We got the season. We were fighting all year. And to do what we did from the circumstances is true in itself going to be remembered in Buckeye lore. It's just the fact that you had that sour taste in your mouth of getting stomped by Alabama. And then as a Buckeye fan, you tried to avoid Twitter because all these other teams who didn't even make it this far were starting to be like, told you this would happen.
I avoided it. At least. I mean, I was on Twitter because had to promote the L7C and all that good stuff. But I tried to avoid anything that had to do with Ohio State, Alabama. I know you were sending Alabama stuff in our group chat. I was like, come on, bro. We just lost to them.
I mean, it's crazy to think about because, I mean, with Nick Saban, who won his 7th national championship, 7, 6 with Alabama,
and 1 with LSU.
And 1 with LSU. Every senior class has at least gotten 1.
That is insane.
And you think of the Heisman Trophy winner, Devonta Smith, this was his 3rd national championship game.
Yes, 3 trophies, 3 national championship trophies.
Nope, remember he lost one.
All right, against Clemson.
They lost
Yep. Well, that's 2, and then he has a Heisman Trophy. Yeah. Man, Alabama's so good. Every year they just find incredible talent, and I don't understand.
Yeah, because the Clemson game proved, because everyone was like, there's Clemson, Alabama, and then you have a step below Ohio State and Georgia of the world. And we're like, hold on, we're right there with those two. And then we kill Clemson. But then we come here and get killed by Alabama. It's like, are we really on their level? Like, we did beat them in 14, but a lot of things had to go right for us, and it did. I mean, they had 3 picks. We had, that means we got extra possessions. When they had a game of 1 fumble and no picks, it was just bad. But going forward now with OSU, we're obviously going to lose a lot of players. Shaun Wade's already declared for the draft. Jonathan Cooper is leaving. Sooner or later, Justin Fields will declare for the draft. Where do we go from here?
I mean, next man up. Hopefully our recruits that that were recruited this year in the past couple of years can step up. I am worried defensively because we didn't have the greatest season defensively. Again, that Indiana game, their quarterback and wide receiver went off against us. Penn State, their wide receiver went off against us. And those were our starters. So I'm definitely worried about how we will look defensively. I feel like every other year we have either a good defense or a bad defense. And hopefully this was a bad defense. So hopefully next year we'll have a good defense.
Yeah, it's tough because the 1 year Dwayne Haskins was the starter, Urban's last year. I thought that defense was the worst Ohio State defense I've seen in my life. I really did. And then the year after, Chase Young just improves to Superman, and our defenses, I thought that was one of the better defenses we've had. And then this year, I mean, with only playing 6-8 games, the changes in offseason, things like that, there were times where this defense was stout, but we were exposed at the cornerback position. You could air it out on us if you have competent receivers and a competent quarterback. And Shaun Wade, I mean, he could have left last year. He probably would have been a higher draft pick, but now people seeing him this year, especially these past couple, I think that's going to hurt his draft stock going forward.
Oh, it definitely hurts his draft stock. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 3rd, maybe 4th round in the draft. But just him getting beat, not every game, but a lot of the games this season, definitely hurt his draft stock. Now, he definitely could have improved it if he had have kept Devonta Smith in check, but it didn't look good for him.
It's going to be interesting. We always say the next man up at Ohio State, and Alabama's losing a lot too. Obviously, Devonta Smith, Mac Jones, all these guys are gone, but they'll be right. I mean, if you look at recruiting, how much you take at recruiting, Alabama, Ohio State, they're right near the top with Clemson and Georgia and LSU and those teams like that, and you can get those 5-star recruits from high school, but if they can't develop in college, then they don't pan
Yep.
out. So it's just one of those things that we're going to have to really look at going forward, especially, I mean, the most important position on the field, quarterback. Who's going to be our starting quarterback when we suit up again next fall?
I know we have CJ Stroud. I know he's played a couple games in like garbage time. So I know he's one of the, I think he's a 5-star or maybe 4-star recruit. So he could potentially be our starting quarterback next year. I know we have another good recruit too at the quarterback position.
So it's the biggest thing. Now Ryan Day. I mean, Ryan Day has 2 losses in his career at Ohio State right now. The semifinal game against Clemson last year and the national championship game against Alabama this year. So him going forward, I mean, as long as he stays, I feel like we'll be very successful. And it's hard being an Ohio State fan because we've been so dominant over the Big Ten that we're not even comparing ourselves to other Big Ten teams anymore. We expect to win the Big Ten every year because our recruiting, talent, coaching is so far superior to everyone right now. We're just like, I mean, we're going to smoke everyone in the Big Ten, but could we beat Clemson? Could we beat an Alabama? Could we beat a Georgia? That's what we're always looking to now as Buckeye fans when we're watching these other teams.
Yeah. I mean, we've just, like you said, we've just been so dominant the last decade that you just expect Ohio State to be in the playoffs every year. Now,
yeah,
I mean, some years, Michigan State was over us, but you just expect Ohio State to be up there with the Alabamas and the Clemsons.
Yep. Oh no, 100%. Like, that's just what we expect to do, especially when you don't have the rival being competitive as recently, which, speaking of them, Jim Harbaugh looks like he signed a extension for 5 years, and it's kind of sad that the Ohio State Verified Twitter retweeted Harbaugh signing. Like, it's like, yay, 5 more years of killing Jim Harbaugh. What did you think about OSU's Twitter doing that?
That's just hilarious. That's a very excellent troll because, like, we've said this on the podcast. We don't like. I still don't understand why Michigan rehired him. But again, I guess there's no other coaching options available, which is strange. But I mean, there's some NFL coaches that just got fired. So there's NFL coaches they could have got, but I guess Jim Harbaugh is their man, so good for them, I guess. I definitely know he took a pay cut to get re-signed.
Yeah, I think it was. I thought it was expected that he was going to re-sign. I remember if you remember the beginning of the year where they destroyed a Minnesota team who we thought was really good from last year. Then it turned out this year they weren't that good, and then they lose to Michigan State and Penn State, and need I go on? We don't even play them this year. Indiana killed them, and D. Brown left, and he's already been hired on. So it's always going to be interesting to see what they do up north because I mean we play them at the end of the year. That's the rivalry game, and one of these days, don't know when, they're going to beat us when they're not supposed to, and that's going to ruin our season, and that's going to remind some OSU fans the hate that they have for Michigan. Because, I mean, they've been non-existent in our path to winning Big Ten titles and going to playoff games and things like that. But they're Michigan. They're one of the winningest programs of all time. We've been so dominant for the past 20 years, and they still have the series lead against us.
I think we were looking at it a couple weeks ago. I think we need 7 more to tie it.
Yeah. It took 20 years of Tressel, Meyer, and Day, and now we're 7 behind, which I can't wait for us to finally lead that series. That's going to be a real good feeling on that. But now Buckeye, college football is over. Byron, through coronavirus and all that, they finished the season.
I honestly didn't think they would because of coronavirus. I don't think anybody would be able to finish the season, but we did. Some, played more than others. We heard that stories all throughout the season, But I mean, despite that embarrassing loss against Alabama, I think we had a successful season. We completed the mission and we got an extra game out of it.
Yeah, and I guess the things going forward too now is that conferences like the Big Ten and Pac-12, our commissioners, Kevin Warren, they're going to have like lesser power in the eyes of other commissioners. Like the SEC commissioner, they had their plan. They had time for makeup games. Alabama played 13 games in COVID.
I think Nick Saban was the only one who had COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had it twice. And then, just breaking right now, Trey Sermon declaring for the draft.
I figured he was. I think he was a fifth-year senior, so I didn't think he was going to come back.
Congrats to him, man. You almost have a thing rivaling Zeke of the 3 back-to-back games. Would have loved to see what he would have done in that championship game if he didn't have a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah.
And obviously, he transferred to Ohio State and then breaks the rushing record in a game.
Just dominant. I think we would have did. Well, I'll say much better if he had to play the whole game. Because he's just so explosive. Like, you have him as a speedy option, and you have Master Teague as like the power running back. So I think it would have been a nice combo to have speed and then the power running game. I think it just would have done well for us.
And so we're going to have to wait and see, man. We're going to have to wait and see where these Buckeyes get drafted. NFL, they're still in the playoffs, divisional round still going. I know tonight's a big night for you, the Saints.
Yes, the Saints and the Bucks.
So we're going to have to wait from the NFL to see how they're doing combines, because we know we're going to have a lot of Buckeyes at the combines. We'll see how Fields and all of them test, and then we'll come back a little bit and talk about when the Buckeyes get drafted, where they're drafted, if you feel like they got disrespected or not. And, we'll go from there. Byron, if you had one word to describe this Buckeyes season, what would you describe it as?
Successful.
Okay. I like that. I'm going to use Warriors. They were Warriors this whole fighting for everything they had to even have a season. And with that being said, guys, this was the last Buckeye football podcast of this football year, season-wise, going over games. As we said, we're going to come back and talk about when combine's going on and seeing where our Buckeyes get drafted. And we're gonna go from there. But thank you everyone for listening to our Buckeye previews and reviews during COVID. Hopefully next fall we'll be able to do 15 games to win a national championship. Hopefully we have 15 reviews and 15 previews on our way back to a national championship, because now a new focus is not getting embarrassed.
So now that we had, lost to Clemson, beat Clemson this year, is Alabama the next mission? Beat Alabama like they beat us?
I think Alabama should always be a goal or mission, because they're the New England Patriots dynasty of college football. Like, you want to beat them, and unless they have some fluke nonsense like the year of LSU when they won and Tua gets hurt, things like that, something freaky like that happens, they're always in the mix, and you're going to have to beat them to win the title. I don't think anyone has won the title in this new era without beating Alabama, except for LSU, but LSU had to beat them in the regular season to get there.
Because the first year we beat them to get to the national championship.
And they were the number 1 seed. And then Clemson, with Deshaun Watson, beat them in the national championship game after Alabama beat them. And then Alabama beat Georgia in the national championship game. And then Trevor Lawrence's Clemson beat Alabama in the national championship game. And then LSU beat Alabama in the SEC to get to the national championship game. And then this year, Notre Dame didn't beat Alabama, and we didn't beat Alabama. And I know it really was sucking about this game is that how the heck did Notre Dame keep Alabama to 31
That
points?
is what I want to know. That is what I asked the day after the game. I was like, how did Notre Dame have a better defensive scheme than we did?
Devonta's halftime stats, he still had 3 touchdowns that game, but his yards and all that, I don't even think they were. He had a better game against us at half than he did against Notre Dame the whole game.
I'm not going to say Kerry Coombe should be fired because he, like you said, he had defensively, we had a okay season, but man, I don't know if he needs to come up with new defensive schemes, but he needs something. It's not working.
Yeah, because I'm surprised we didn't look more into that, how Notre Dame schemed them up, because it's crazy. Because Notre Dame, what was that final score? 31.
Yeah, 31-14.
Yeah, so they kept it to 20 less points than we did, and only scored 10 less points than we did. So that's things going forward, but we're in the off season. It's time to be back in the lab and training.
Yeah, I will say though, if COVID is still prevalent like it was last year, I hope that the Big Ten Conference has a better game plan than they did this year.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. We can't be having what happened this year and switching your Big Ten title rules the week before.
Because I know that pissed a lot of people off. Like, oh, they would do it for Ohio State, but they wouldn't do it for any other team. Which, I mean, I get it's probably true, but I hope as a Big Ten fan and a football fan that they would do it for other schools if they were in the same situation that we were in.
Right. Agreed. We're going to have to wait and see. But with that being said, that concludes the college football season in COVID. A completed college football season. It ends with the Alabama Crimson Tide as a 13-0 undefeated national champion and the 7-1 Ohio State Buckeyes as the runner-up. So thank you all for listening to the L7C podcast. In a couple hours, the Saints will be on. So, Byron will be locked in. He'll be seeing his tweets about the games and seeing his reactions. Hopefully he can get a good Saints win.
I just don't want us to get embarrassed like I can't take another heartbreak.
We'll see. We'll have to see. But thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Even in a loss, as always,
go Bucks.
Go Bucks. You guys have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.